The archives are organized in some extraordinary ways by the staff here, and we've gone in to try to look at the way they're structured, and then with extra things to help out, and sometimes move something that got in the wrong place. But also there are things that are still to be sorted, and this was in that pile. So I'm going to open this out, and you can see that it's got two sides to it. This is an artifact from a workshop that I would have done, that I did. And it also might be an artifact from rehearsal, because there is a way in which things that we experiment with in rehearsals would make their way into all kinds of systems where I might be teaching or gathering people and sharing artistic processes. I like this particular one because it has many, many parts. What I also like about this is that this is early. I have developed this tool that I'm going to describe in a minute into more complexity, and I've done it many, many different versions. My guess is, by looking at it, that the question posed either to myself or in the context of the workshop, and I decided to do it too, is to take moments in your artistic life and to do a quick journey of what you've been doing, or your creative life, or something about you in relationship to creativity and or art, making things. When you're making it, you kind of just go fast. The backside has the stories that are contained in the front. But while I was drawing and while I'm explaining to you, I kind of mixed that up a little bit. But in the workshop, you would just go, go, go. But these dots represent when I was a child, less than 5, because we were still living in Los Angeles. I would have these nightmares, and they were just dots all over the place getting me. And I always considered them then and now as a wildly interesting piece of information. And there was something about the way my mother would soothe me that I loved. But the dots and the fact that it was so abstract and so present struck me as kind of an interesting memorial to childhood. But if you follow it along, it sees there's, it looks to me like this is not just about, now that I'm looking at it more closely, it's not just, the question must have been our creativity, but actually how you live through wartime. So I'm guessing this might come from the early docu-dances from the early 80s, because I have something here, my first war that I lived through, then there's the word no, there's something about life. I'm not even sure what it all is. On the back side, you get the stories. This says, "Dear," and it's blank. "I was traveling back east. The car was full of strangers from the ride board. We stopped to, we stopped at a commune right after Nixon resigned. I never saw any of the people in that room again. It was such a huge moment." So you go from the front into these little moments in the back. So when you're done with one of these, you have multiple ways of absorbing a life. And then if you go look at the art, you can see multiple ways that these things emerge back out of the, regions of our minds and our bodies and our experiences into something that you can share with people. This one says, "The first war, standing that night in the snow in front of the capital of Vermont." It was a demonstration against the Vietnam War. And watching it over and over on TV. And I remember, I didn't say it here, but that's when I decided I shouldn't be a protester, I should be an artist. Not that they couldn't be the same, but that I was going to put my energy not into some of the student organizing committees that I was a part of, but actually into art making. And I might add as a sidebar, one reason I didn't want to be in those committees is that honestly the women made the coffee. Okay, but this one, so remember that on this side is a map of a whole life, and then on the back you get the story. So it's covering a lot of different periods. This one says, Dear Liz, the intensity passes. The nation heals. The scars reopen. A new generation copes with yet another bad president. So I think I must have written that one right after, at least from my perspective, bad president when Ronald Reagan was elected. One more thing on here is this. It's a list. There are numbers. And by each one is a piece of information. This is the moment when I'm lifting off the page the drawings, the words, and turning them into physicality. This is when the dance takes over. I could get up and just dance about my feelings about the war. I could, and that's a good way to make dances. I could just get up, walk into the room, and start moving and assume that my body is telling me things about what it's like to live in this country right now. I could say whatever I do counts. That's okay too. Or I could be really explicit and say, I'm actually going to make something. I'm going to determine right now, I'm going to say this is going to mean that. And that's what this starts to do, but in a rather abstract way. So the first one says one line. And what the suggestion is, if I were in the studio or I was giving this to dancers to work with, is that they would have to take one of these things, and this becomes the pathway of their movement. They don't get to choose where to go in the room. They actually have to follow as if it's a road map. And that would be count one. Of course, it's not count 1, 2, 3 like that. It's like count 1 might take 10 seconds, count 2 may take 2 seconds. So it's not rhythmic. It's just meant to be a linear process. So, okay, that's the line. Next one says object. That means that I'm going to say to somebody, find something on this thing, you're going to be the object, like be the dot, or be this umbrella, whatever that is, or be the cart, and of course you've just made this so you know what the stuff is. It says trace a window. That's the third one. And this suggests that I would say to you, if you were here with me, find some place here in which you exist. Like I might take my childhood bedroom, which I barely can remember. That's where the dots were. The task is, there's a window, look out the window, trace what you see. What a nice way to do memory. What is interesting about this from an archival perspective? If you are potentially someone curious about creative process and you're interested in discovering either on its own terms or you're interested in understanding mine or the many creative processes I've had, you'll see that I spent a life trying to just figure out what I am doing when I'm being a creative, like what happens when you get a bolt of information or you get a spark, or what's actually going on, what were the conditions that caused that, could I bring those conditions back again? Because I'm of the mind that even though I think creativity is a birthright, and I think it's natural, it doesn't mean you can't cultivate it. That is to say, we can bring ourselves to creating the conditions so that our creativity can flourish and not just wait for it to kind of land on us on a good day. Oh, wow, I'm in flow. That's great. I like it when that happens. But I don't want to depend on that. I want to depend on my own capacities and those around me to be able to make the things we need to do. So this artifact is a piece of that.